In studio with us from the Presentation Partners in Housing, Cheri. My gosh, Cheri Gerken. I've known you for a long time, Cheri. Let's walk back down memory lane. Let's take everybody back to the mid-2000s. Where did you find yourself?
Well, I was at YouthWorks as their program manager, and you were?
I was a youth pastor over at First Lutheran Church, running an organization and a movement called Homeless and Hungry. And we wanted to help out YouthWorks. You wanted to help us out. It was just like this mutual, beneficial, awesome thing.
Yep, it sure was.
And it turns out you have a screw loose, Cheri, because you've been doing nonprofit work your whole life. And that screw loose is really beautiful, actually. Your first gig, you've always been in Fargo, right?
Yeah, I've always been in Fargo. I actually started out at the Village as an intensive in-home therapist and just kind of moved forward from there.
Well, then you went to work after YouthWorks. You found yourself at Fraser, which my mother-in-law is the CEO of. And so just a very small world. And now tell us what you're doing.
Now I am the executive director for Presentation Partners in Housing, which is a nonprofit organization that is sponsored by the Sisters of the Presentation of the Blessed Virgin Mary. It's a mouthful.
That is a mouthful. Dumb that down for me. Like, what is it that you do? Because it's I know what you do, but I don't know if the listening audience knows.
Yeah.
And I think it's fascinating.
Well, so 30 years ago, the sisters were actually way ahead of their time. They realized that our community was experiencing a housing crisis in that people were losing their housing and having difficulty getting back into housing. And so they pulled together all kinds of different resources. They pulled together realtors like yourself, people from banks, people from the schools, and they really talked about what sort of issue was happening in our community and why. And they decided to develop a nonprofit entity that would focus their work on that so that we could keep people housed.
30 years ago, a group of sisters said, we see a problem, we're going to jump on it.
Yep.
Why don't we see that all the time? Or is that happening now still? Like, and I'm not talking about the sisters. I mean, like, you come from the nonprofit background. Like, how were these things started, Cheri? Because there's obviously something that has worked with this equation.
Yes, and I think the sisters got their drive to start nonprofits and to build entities that help across the world, dating back 300 years ago to their founder, Nano Nagel. She was actually an incredible woman who educated young ladies by day and walked the streets of Cork County, Ireland at night with a lantern in her hand, giving medicine and help to the poor who were going to die alone. And so she actually told her sisters to spend themselves for the poor, and our local sisters have taken that mission forward and decided to do that here in our community through Partners in Housing.
It is a rare breed when somebody sees a problem and they actually act on it. I'll be honest, Cheri, like these last 6 or 7 months, they've been tough for us as a community and tough for us as individuals because most of our fulfillment and joy and purpose actually comes from doing really good things, doesn't it?
Yes.
And we're limited on how we can do really good things right now. Yeah. But my hope is that people can see that there are vehicles and venues out there where they can serve. And so if I was listening to you talk right now and I said, man, I'd love to find a way to get involved or to do something good, what does that look like?
Volunteering right now, face-to-face, is really difficult because of all the struggles that we're engaged with COVID-19. So donating financially is a really great way for people to support our organization. We're in the process of launching a brand new program called Prevention and Diversion. Okay. Along with the help of the United Way of Cass Clay, we'll be launching that really shortly, and we'll be up to about half capacity in January of this year.
Tell me more about that program of prevention and diversion. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me if prevention and diversion is one of the vehicles to keep people out of homelessness. What are some of those steps that are taken?
So prevention kind of goes back to what the sisters thought about 30 years ago. They realized that it costs us a lot less dollars to keep people housed than it does to dig them out of the depths of homelessness. So what better way to prevent homelessness than from stopping it from ever happening in the first place? So really with prevention, we want to catch people early on and provide them with the resources that they need to stay in the housing that they're in. So it may be a rent payment for a month or two. It may be helping them get caught up on a utility bill. It may be helping them with an eviction notice and getting them rehoused in a new apartment so that they can move forward successfully.
It's interesting. I served as campaign chair for the United Way. I'm on their board now. And so when you align things with this housing first model, I know that there's some great good that comes from that. Walk me through, let's say I am a single parent and I'm about a week away from homelessness. How do you step in?
Well, we have a great collaborative. It's called the Homeless Prevention Project. And when the Homeless Prevention and Diversion Project launches, it will kind of ebb and flow into that.
Okay.
But right now, if people in our community are in need, on the North Dakota side, they call Sendica
Yep.
and begin the application process. And on the Minnesota side, they call Lakes and Prairies. So Partners in Housing, Sendica, Lakes and Prairies, and the Salvation Army have pooled all of our resources together. So instead of people having to run all over to all of our different agencies and tell their story many times, which is really traumatizing for them, we've brought our staff together. So people fill out an application and then it's processed once weekly with all of our staff together instead of putting that stress on people that are in a high level of need.
You know, if you're unfamiliar with what the process used to look like, it was a bunch of people who were really well-intended and really disconnected from each other.
Yes.
Is that pretty fair to say?
Yes. So if you were in need, you literally probably had to hop 10 buses to go to us, to go to Lakes and Prairies, to go to Sendica, to go to the Salvation Army. You had to tell your story over and over and over again. You had to provide us all with this documentation. And it was just really a cumbersome process for people that had very small amounts of resources.
Yeah.
And so now we're able to come together and make it much simpler for them to apply and get the assistance that they need to move forward.
I'd imagine that if somebody ends up at your doorstep, the precipice of running around and asking for help and telling that story is an exhaustive one. And so I love the fact that there's collaboration and cooperation as a part of this.
Yeah.
Can we solve homelessness, Cheri?
We sure can. I think if we can prevent homelessness, that's the best way to make sure that homelessness doesn't happen in our community. And then secondly, we talked a little bit about prevention, and let's talk a little bit about diversion. Diversion is really about diverting people away from entry into our shelter system. So finding other alternatives. Do you have a friend or a family member that you can stay with?
Yeah.
Could we put you up in a hotel for a few nights? Can we find some other options to keep you out of our shelter system?
So if somebody's going into that shelter system, obviously it's there to support, but I'm trying to read the undertones here. Is it a demoralizing place to go? Is it a difficult place for somebody to move themselves out of?
Our shelters in our community are awesome, and they do fabulous, fabulous work. But last year, 2,551 households in our community actually sought shelter, and 28.5 of them were able to be accommodated within our shelter system. So if you think of all of those extra people that are out there with absolutely no place to go, those are the people
You're talking like
that we
1,800
should be able
households.
to divert.
You're saying there's 1,800 households as of 2019 where they needed shelter of some sort and the local entities couldn't support them.
Yes.
That's a huge problem, Cheri.
Yeah. So if we can divert those people into other housing options, we'll be way ahead of the game. And that will allow our shelters to actually do the work that they were intended to do, which is
Yeah.
to take in the people that need it the most and provide them with an opportunity to find housing that works for them. So by preventing and diverting, we're also freeing up our system to do the work that it was really intended to do.
Getting back to the roots as the sisters had intended, right?
Yes.
Incredible things that you're doing, Cheri, and thank you for being at the front lines. For somebody who's been a servant your entire life, you are in a very thankless job sometimes where you are sacrificing so much time, so much emotion, and you often go unseen. So on behalf of the Fargo-Moorhead community, thank you for what you do. It's a big deal.
Yeah, thank you for having me here today. It's interesting. You're a realtor and you're out there finding people homes and selling people homes. And it's our job to ensure that all of the people that need a home in our community have a place to call that. So thanks for having me.
Looks like we're doing the same thing. Cheri, so great to have you. Folks, we're going to go to break, but in the meantime, swing over to hatchrealty.com and start perusing for your next pad. This is Real Estate Radio with Erik Hatch.